everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the last session before lunch. It is my pleasure to be the person up here who gets to talk to you with my good friend, Sanjay Poonen. Sanjay and I have known each other for a long time. Sanjay is the Vice President General Manager for End User Computing at VMware. He's a long-time Silicon Valley insider. I've personally known him for decades myself. And what we really want to do today is come in and have a fireside chat and talk about the journey that Sanjay has been on, and in particular share some of his insights and his perspective on, not just how do you have how we'd all like to have a career like Sanjay, but also how you in the audience can look at where Sanjay has been and what he's doing today at VMware for inspiration examples of where your own careers and your own companies can go. So let me bring Sanjay, come on up. Okay, we're gonna share this until we get the tech going. So I want to say that it's a privilege for me to be here with Sanjay. I have known Sanjay so long that actually I like to say that's what I used to look like, that picture, when when I first met Sanjay, and I kind of wish I still did. But it's been a long, long time. And the thing about Sanjay that I find fascinating is when you start looking at his, you go on LinkedIn or look at his profile, you start ticking off the companies that he's been at. And I actually had to write them down because I knew I wouldn't remember them. Microsoft, Apple, Veritas, Symantec, Informatica, SAP, and now VMware. What you really have, of course, is a pretty impressive background in tech and a pretty amazing career over the last 15, 20 years. So what I'd like to do, now I'll sit down, now that we have a microphone, is Sanjay, start us out really with, how did you even envision, or did you envision this kind of career? When you got out of school, what was your goal, and kind of how do you sort of look at the industry and make the choice you did? It looks like it's kind of focused on enterprise software, it's focused on business. What was the origins of that?
Josh, I don't think you look back always and you think your life is planned. Quite frankly, many of you will find that, as you go through life, it's a sequence of left turns and right turns and straight paths and so on. Like many of you, I grew up in India, probably a little bit dissimilar to many of the folks who are first-generation immigrants. I came here as an undergrad, and most Indians who come here to the U.S. come as graduate students after they've done their bachelor's degree in someplace, like an IIT or someplace. There were a few universities in the late 80s when I went to college that were offering scholarships to international students. And, I grew up in a middle-income family in India, which is poor by American standards. So I couldn't certainly afford to go to any of the best colleges here. But when I got that scholarship, I had a choice of either going to IIT Madras to do my electrical engineering, or I got a scholarship to Dartmouth. And I had no idea where Dartmouth was. I had no idea where New Hampshire was. I knew where Boston was. So I arrived in Logan Airport with $50 in my pocket, and I took a bus to New Hampshire. And it's just, I froze my buns off. It's just really cold there. But I think, the thing that I probably had as a core vector to the way my parents had brought me up, and probably a key principle, was, work really hard. And certainly, you're given gifts, God-given gifts, whatever they might be. It might be a sport, it might be an intellect. I was certainly pretty well equipped in terms of academically being prepared. But, once I had come out of college, I really wanted to work in the tech world. Apple was very prevalent on the Dartmouth campus. They were one of the first campuses to invest in Ethernet. They were the only campus, I think, to just bet big on Mac computers in the late 80s and early 90s. So when I finished college, I wanted to come here to the Silicon Valley and work at Apple. And it was those were actually the wilderness years of Steve Jobs. Jobs wasn't at Apple at the time, he was at Next. And then, of course, everything since then. But it really has been, I don't think there's any script to the journey. It's just been left turn, right turn, following your heart, meeting great people, and then, now in the more later stages, building businesses.
Well, and I'm gonna rebut that a little bit, because there's been some real thought gone into the career, and I'm going to tell a story because I know this guy. When he was at Informatica, I was actually doing a lot of work at SAP as a consultant and analyst. And there's this new hotshot guy at SAP named Shai Agassi, who was really disrupting SAP, a company that needed some disruption. He was the youngest person ever to elected to the management board of SAP, the first foreigner. Very dynamic guy, really moving the company out of Germany to Silicon Valley. And Sanjay and I had some conversations about it, and he said, I want to go work for SAP, but if I'm going to work for SAP, I'm going to work for Shai. That's the guy I want to work for. And there you go. How long did it take from that conversation to the next time I saw him?
2000. Yeah, I joined SAP in 2006.
But it was. I just want to say, this guy doesn't. There's chance, and the chance and turns on the road, but also, as they say, chance favors the prepared mind. And it looked like you set yourself up for that, definitely.
Listen, there are great companies and great brands, and SAP is certainly one. I spent most of my career at SAP and learned a ton there. I got to tell you a short story of my first meeting of Shai. Josh knows Shai very well, and I'd seen this figure. He's obviously an incredible entrepreneur, an Israeli entrepreneur would come, and just the thought of an Israeli entrepreneur in a German company, I was like, wow, how is he being so successful? And he was really turning around the Silicon Valley in the mid-2000s with a slew of executives that were joining SAP at the time. These were the who's who in the industry, and the Silicon Valley campus that's in, on Hillview, ironically, just 50 yards
right across the street
from
right.
VMware.
My
commute didn't change very much. But I remember when they were looking for a head of analytics, and most of my life, although I'm in end user computing and mobility now, most of my life has been in big data and analytics. Someone told me, hey, they're looking for somebody in analytics. This is what you've done most of your life. You should go talk to them. So one thing led to another, and I was scheduled to meet Shai. I think it was 4:30 on some evening, and in typical Shai fashion, he'll probably wouldn't mind my sharing this. He's 20 minutes late. The interview is supposed to last for a half an hour, and I've got 10 minutes with him left, that is. He comes in, plonks a document on the page that's 10 pages long and said, hey, have you seen your resume? It's like 10 pages. I said, well, it's actually one page, but when you give a one page to a recruiter, it comes back as 10 pages. And then, we proceeded to talk for 10 minutes. He's extremely poker-faced, asked me a couple of grilling questions, and, I finished, and the person who was recruiting for that job called me afterwards and said, what did you think? And I said, well, I don't think Shai really liked me. Next day I get the call and says, well, Shai wants you to start like tomorrow. So I think what I learned through my years, especially working with Shai, and then of course with many other great executives that I've been very fortunate to work for, is you have to be really passionate about the cause that you have. Shai was focused on transforming SAP to be much more of a platform-focused company. He invented the category of NetWeaver, drove things that were change and stuff like that. And many of the other folks I've been fortunate to work with that have inspired me. When you have that drive to change, and the tech industry is driven through disruptive innovation. I've been very fortunate in the last year and a half that I've been working at VMware. VMware's basis, some of the fastest growing software companies, all been about disruptive innovation. And that type of change doesn't come easily, especially when you're a big company. You have to keep challenging yourselves to challenge the status quo.
So disruption, that's a great segue, because as far as I know, the V in VMware is for virtualization, and here you are, end user computing. It's not necessarily the first thing you think of, and yet not only have you kind of turned that around, and I'll add this, Sanjay shows up at a company, and he did this at SAP too, and picks up something that's been, you called it the red-headed stepchild at one point, and turns it into something. Next thing you know, there's Gartner Magic Quadrants and market leadership attached to that category. Tell us about kind of end user computing and the mandate there, and how does that fit with the V in VMware?
It's a good question. I think our story at VMware, although a company always has a name when you start off, and it has your brand that hopefully starts you where you are, and V in VMware is virtualization. But today, as you've gotten, we're about a $6 billion company and growing really fast. We're really an infrastructure company. And when you think about what virtualization does, it powers the data center. And it's like that heart of a data center. So beyond just the data center in terms of compute, we've expanded into areas of storage and networking virtualization and really created the category of a software-defined data center. When the panelists before, I was just watching the end of that panel, we're talking about, software-defined, VMware is the one who created that, the category of software-defined everything. Virtual compute, storage, networking, management, and so on, because we live as a software-defined type of company. But I sensed that there was a big opportunity, and it's the exact same opportunity I sensed at SAP. I remember telling Shai, if SAP got into the analytics space, they would crush it because they had all this incredible data sitting in their transactional systems that was waiting to be mined. And it just took a company focus to get in the analytics. And I had the same conviction as I came to VMware that if this great infrastructure company got into something that's much more in the data center and could actually become the de facto standard for the software-defined data center to desktop or data center to device, it was a huge opportunity. And then the other thing you do as you take any job is you size up your competition, right? It's like basically playing in the NFL or playing in whatever favorite sports, and you want to know who's your competition in your bracket. And I felt that the competition that we faced in this, which is a bunch of different companies, weren't really going to be relevant to the future of IT. And I say that with full respect to all competitors. I'm very, very competitive. But when you look at companies like Citrix and there's a whole lot of startups, Mobile Iron and Good, I never sensed that CIOs were saying that company is going to be relevant to my future of IT. Very good innovators, perhaps at points of time. So as we sized it up, I felt there was a tremendous opportunity VMware could bring the thing that made them successful, which was innovation, disruptive innovation, and take that all the way from the data center to the desktop and device. And that's what we've been doing. And that's really what end-user computing is. It's automating, managing, analyzing all of the computing needs of an end user, whether it's a desktop or a laptop or a tablet or a phone or a Tesla. I think that entire spectrum there's a lot of opportunity to do this well.
Yeah, I like the tablet to Tesla trajectory. I'm working on that one myself. Thank you.
I'm working on it too.
Yeah, good. But let me ask you this, because like I said, I've obviously seen you in action. You were at Informatica. We worked together then. SAP, now VMware. There's and as I said earlier, the results are there, right? You sign up with this guy, put him on your team, and you get Magic Quadrants and market leadership out of it. Certain things happen, acquisitions, strategic acquisitions. Is there a formula, or can you sort of share kind of how do you do that? How do you take a disruptive concept? Everyone's got great ideas for how to disrupt an industry, but actually execute it. What's the secret sauce? Is there a secret sauce?
I'm again, I hate to say that there's anything that I will take, sole credit for. I seek to constantly be humble and hungry about what you learn. But there are a couple of things I've learned from being within, both an entrepreneur in my early days at an Alpha Blocks, then a smaller company, Informatica, to now trying to be an entrepreneur inside a big company, whether it's SAP or now VMware. First off, it starts with the people. I know everyone's going to say, listen, what did you do that was so disruptively innovative? But I remember when I started, my third or fourth day in the job, I asked for an all hands for the entire team so we could have a town hall. And this was a team, end-user computing. You called it the redhead stepchild in the industry. That had
actually, you called it that.
Called it, right,
I saw you.
And that was true. I mean, a lot of the industry pundits were basically rumoring it was the company that had, it was the part of the company that had the highest attrition and the lowest morale, okay? I
have to interrupt. Analytics at SAP suffered from the same problem before
you
showed up.
Look at that and you say, okay, is there a turnaround opportunity? Because I love those kind of jobs. When someone says, you know what, the odds, I remember the day I joined VMware, one of the press reporters said, I can't believe this SAP executive joined this part of the company that's spitting out executives faster than watermelon seeds. That were exactly the title. I was like, man, game on. So, as we sized it up, the first thing that was very important to us was that sort of famous quote out of Jim Collins from, Built to Last, which is, it's not where the bus is going, it's not how the bus is going, it's who's on the bus. And it was very important to us that as we built that team, we had the fabric of a team that was innovating. And there were some folks within VMware, you obviously want to start with people you can groom from within as opposed to just taking everybody else out. But we were very fortunate in those first 3-6 months to build a dynamic team. One of the guys who runs desktop for me, I think he's spoken at this conference before, Sumit Dhawan was a 16-year veteran at Citrix. He joined me. a couple of other folks from various different industries. Noah Wassemer was a VMware executive. He had left VMware to go join Mobile Iron as the product management lead, went from there to Apple. We recruited him back. And then just all of a sudden, they started in turn hiring some of their stars. And this is the great thing about when you hire talent, especially talent that's better than you, they start hiring people who are better. They start thinking about acquisitions that bring in talent that's incredible. And then it becomes a feeding frenzy because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. That was one. So you hire a great team and you obsess about the people. I spend about probably 40 or 50% of my time scouring LinkedIn for people. I probably haven't used an executive recruiter even once for any of my jobs because I'm looking for talent constantly. I keep probably a good part of my Friday afternoon open to just sort of interview people. And then when you think about innovation, the second thing is product, okay? I sort of have 3 Ps. Poonen has 3 Ps. How about that, Josh? The first is people. Second, when you think about product, you always want to be thinking about innovation that's a step function because you're going to be compared against your competition. And we've always been, I fully remember my first conversation with Pat Gelsinger, my CEO. He's like, you got to make sure VMware's always been about step functions. The hypervisor was a step function over the hardware. So what we've sought to do is really challenge our engineers, who are incredibly talented people, to say, if we're going to do something in anything, whether it's desktop, whether it's mobile, whether it's build, or whether it's acquired, we're going to do something in a step function. And that's all of our moves, whether it was organic or inorganic. You've seen innovative things that we've done organically. If we've looked for acquisitions, we found them to be highly innovative assets, like AirWatch or Cloud Volumes. In fact, Cloud Volumes was a TiEcon-based startup. It was funded by many of the folks here. So, and the third aspect is you look for partners. You look for an ecosystem of players that can build a forcing function beyond what you can do. Isaac Newton said something that's always sort of rung in my head, right? I can see clearly because I sit on the shoulders of giants. And in any company, even a $6-7 billion company like ours, VMware, we need to find partners who are bigger than us who we can sit on their shoulders. So we have, a little bit of a cooperative relationship with Microsoft. We try to play with them as often as we can. But Apple and Google are very strong partners of ours. So I spend a lot of time with them. Samsung, very strong partners of ours. And then many of the server storage folks, folks who are very boutiquely focused, for example, in certain areas like 3D graphics with NVIDIA. And then, of course, all the system integrators, the service providers, the folks like the telcos. And out of our 75,000 partners of VMware, we've prioritized about 30 partners that are elite partners. Every one of my executive staff has to take them on as a partner that they build an executive relationship. And we really take those seriously. When a partner wants to work with us on a program or a campaign, we go really, really strong with them. And you start to find loyalty get started, right? So those are some of the things that I've learned, Josh, over the course of the last 20 years of my IT career.
Yeah. So I think another part of the formula is strategic acquisitions. You guys bought AirWatch last fall, was it?
It's actually exactly a year ago.
It's been a year already. And so let's talk a little about that, both strategically as acquisition, but also what that does in terms of mobility, the end user mobility market that, again, is putting a different letter there in front of the VMware story.
Yeah, maybe it's M-ware or something like that, mobility aware.
No, maybe the M is for mobility.
Yeah. Anyway, virtual mobility. I think that, it was very clear, again, you have some conviction as you come in of a thesis and you want to sort of, combine your head with your heart and, kind of combine the gut with where the actual facts are. It was pretty clear to me that we used to even joke about it when I first joined. You could end, my group's called End User Computing. You could end user computing if you didn't have a mobile strategy. Okay, you get that? So, you can end your focus on user computing if you don't have a mobile strategy, because, desktops and laptops are dead. So I had to get a sense from both Pat, who's my boss and the CEO of the company, from our board, Joe Tucci's our chairman, and from, of course, the executive staff, that mobility was a priority. And during the process that they were recruiting me out of SAP, it was very clear to Pat and to our board that mobility was a priority. They wanted to focus on the right way to get to this, and there was an opportunity to make. So the first 5 or 6 months that I got there, you have to do this obviously in confidence because you don't want everybody speculating about acquisitions and so on. But a core focus of a few of us in the team were driving what exactly we'd want to do. And, there's lots of candidates for acquisition. Probably the best way as a large company is to implement the solutions yourself. So we had our CIO say, hey, listen, we are looking for an enterprise mobile management tool or one component that's called mobile device management. We were running out of steam with a mid-market tool that we were using called FiberLink that since then got acquired by IBM, and we wanted an enterprise tool. And as we looked at this, there were lots of different candidates. We did an evaluation that our IT team ran, and I told them what you strategically implement internally and get working is what we will likely buy. And that's how we found AirWatch, implemented it. The other part that was very important to us, again, coming back to this sort of step function and architectural differences, was to look for where the world is going as opposed to where the world has been. And I'd learned a lot of those lessons at SAP. The world is going from, if you ask yourself 50, 75 years ago, it's going mainframe client server. All of us. I skipped, for many of you who grew up in India, we skipped the mainframe generation. We went right to client server. But today, if you're in IT, certainly your kids or if you're people entering the workforce, they're skipping client server and going right to mobile cloud, okay? So as we think about where the world is going, you want to build and acquire cloud-centric architectures. That's where the world is going. Or you want to build applications or tools that are built for this type of interface as opposed to a desktop. In that context, we were very keen to look for cloud-first architectures, and that's what we found in AirWatch. It was built as a multi-tenant, cloud-first, and then on-premise second. Think Salesforce as opposed to Siebel. Most of the competition that we'd looked at in the space were on-premise and then had separate products for a cloud architecture. And you and I know that sort of story from the legacy companies. When you build two different code bases, one for single tenant on-premise and a separate code base for multi-tenant cloud, you get in all kinds of problems. And that's one of the things that's certainly done us well.
You want to brag a little? Tell us how well mobile's been doing, because it's really...
Like I said, we want to stay humble and hungry, but it's been very successful for us. When we acquired AirWatch, it was about as the analyst tracked it, about a $100 million business. And we disclosed at the end of last year, it did well over 200 million. Many of the competitors who were about the same size as them in that space, they were all startups, were about 145 million or so. So we've done successfully well. We announced in Q1 that our growth overall in end-user computing grew again 50%. My goal is to create $1 billion business here for end-user computing within the company. And, I think that when you set to those goals, you have to look for growth assets that can help you turbocharge that type of growth. And AirWatch has certainly been that.
So I want to, I know we're running out of time, but I really want to, particularly for this audience, talk a little bit about the mentorship and leadership, because I think you've had you touched on it a little earlier, but I think you've had a really unique opportunity to be both mentored by some great leaders, and I know from some of the names that we've discussed, you've really worked for some top-notch people, but also, you said earlier, you've got to manage down as well and get the right people working for you. What can you share kind of in conclusion in terms of this the P as in people side of this, and how do you make that part of your strategy going forward as an individual and a company?
I think it's a great question to end before we let you guys all go to lunch, because it really is my passion. I mean, beyond the innovation and the winning in the market and the competitiveness that I have, people who know me and have I work closely with know that my passion is people and investing in them. I run a leadership development class once a month, once every maybe 8 weeks. And I've put everybody in my class through it, which really helps groom and grow leaders through principles like servant leadership. And many of us know, whether it's the Nelson Mandelas or the Mahatma Gandhis or whoever, servant leadership ultimately is I think, the ultimate form of leadership. And it's almost contrarian. Like, how could you be a servant and still be a leader? But I'll never forget what Nelson Mandela said, right? You want to lead from the back and let people feel like they're leading from the front. And that's what we've sought to do, is continue to invest very, very heavily in people, groom them, make sure that where they know that they've got insufficiencies, you're surrounding them with talent. And we obsess about that. And I've sought to make that sort of part of my mantra. I feel like there's so much that I've been blessed with in life that I didn't deserve. You know, working with some incredible CEOs, whether it was Michael Skok at Alpha Blocks or Gaurav Dhillon at Informatica, and then John Thompson at Symantec. He's now chairman of Microsoft, and then a slew of great people at SAP, whether it was Shai Agassi and Bill McDermott before I left, and now Pat Gelsinger and Joe Tucci is our chairman. I owe it to them. If I can learn something from many of these great folks who are in the industry, I owe it to others to be able to teach. And I think the greatest form of any leader is someone who obsesses about teaching, has a teachable point of view. So my advice to every one of you is, you're always going to be looking for what you can get, right? It's the human tendency is to look for what you can get from others. I think when you turn that around to figure out what you can give, you will find actually automatically you get a lot. And that's been my own lesson. It's a fantastic way to live your life. You see some of the greatest people in the world, whether it's Bill Gates now, getting even more joy out of giving than getting. And I think that that's the way we as people ought to be running our lives. So, hopefully that's helpful to the folks here.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your attention. Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.